Is it okay if I take this off while I'm talking?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Wallace, we are starting the meeting at 6:07. Okay, thank you. We're reconvening to regular session. May I please have you stand to say the pledge? Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have no action that was taken in closed session. Okay, public communication, agenda, and non-agenda items. Any person wishing to comment on agenda and non-agenda items may do so. Please step to the podium and state your name. It would be appreciated if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes. And California law prohibits the school board from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the board. Per board policy BB 9323, individual speakers may be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board may limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. The president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that additional persons speak only if they have something new to add. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to us? No? Thank you. Okay. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
I'll say.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Information discussion items. Alexa, do you have your report for us? Thank you.
Good evening. It's a small crowd today. So the recent climate at Orstimba is only what I could describe as getting back into the groove of things. So winter break has passed and students are doing their best to get the ball rolling again after taking much needed rest. So some of these activities include seniors applying for scholarships, one of the most prominent ones being Tosca. Juniors are finishing details for winter homecoming, sophomores are in the midst of planning fundraisers, and the freshmen just closed their recent Beanie fundraiser. So our clubs on campus like STEM are finishing details for their t-shirts, and they're investing their time in planning a possible field trip, but with pandemic stuff, it may not happen. And they're also doing future engineering competitions. NAMI was active during break with their holiday cards and socks to the local convalescent home. The Interact Club was also very active. They packed holiday bags for senior citizens and participated in REITs across America. And the Warriors Organization for Women's Empowerment and NCLUSD have been hosting and participating in meetings. This is very impressive, seeing that there have been like slow feelings before and after break because kids were kind of tired. But I just really want to emphasize the importance of the clubs for our students, especially with these times, because more recently on campus, I've had students, at least like 3, come up to me talking about how specifically the mental health organization NAMI has helped them to seek professional help about their mental health, which is really great because in the past students were too shy, but like seeing that clubs are influence them and encouraging them to do these things is really cool. And so winter sports has also been really interesting as well. This basketball season has been great. They've had various victories, and some of the Lady Warriors on our basketball team have even won some scholarships, which is pretty cool. The soccer team has also been very active, as well as our wrestling team, who recently had their senior night. And something really exciting about sports is that tennis and the boys volleyball is starting their conditioning. And there's been a lot of buzz about boys volleyball. Everybody's really excited to see it, especially the boys. There's like 100 people trying out. So, and also recently, about a day before break, the marching band's new uniforms came in. And so later on during the rest of the break, some of the final pieces came in, and it's really exciting to see, especially like how much the band has been needing uniforms for a very long time, you know, and they're finally not going to like die in the sun like they used to. And so the band actually plans to show off the uniforms in one of the near board meetings and at the concerts that they have planned for March and May. And so for now, this is what our campus has been like, but with Valentine's Day, spring sports, winter homecoming, AP test training, but it's a headache, and soon to be seeing college response letters coming up, our campus is going to be a lot more energetic.
Oh, thank you very much, Alexa. Sounds like the campus is really moving well. And I'm glad to hear that the mental health is being approached and students feel good about that. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Posey, would you like to speak to the COVID protocols for the 2022 school year?
Yeah, I'd like to just give a little update on the world of COVID as it is back with, well, it never left us, but it certainly is making its presence known again. I was in a meeting with the County Director of Public Health on Friday, so that's the effectiveness of this information. Friday, right? She said we are expecting a spike in cases. We were seeing it now, but it should continue over the next 5 weeks if we follow the model from London, South Africa, I believe she said. The number of cases will go up even more so than we saw with Delta variant. It's looking to be significantly more than the Delta variant numbers, but it's important to note that the number of hospitalizations are down compared to Delta. So it's not just the rate is down, but there's lower numbers with higher cases. This doesn't seem to be a variant that produces hospitalization, and those in the hospital seem to be precautionary at some points for some other issues. She does note that vaccination is your best bet, and when we say vaccination from this point forward, we actually mean to be fully vaccinated. You're 14 days past your booster. Okay, the second shot is just now part of the process to get fully vaccinated. She stated with passion that she still believes the best place for a student during the day is in a classroom, that it's going to be a tough 5 weeks, but we'll get through it. And she wholeheartedly believed that, and says that it's really, we saw the effects education on kids when we pulled them out of class. This isn't so alarming that we should be considering shutting schools down. There are some boards in the county who've elected to go to Zoom for their meetings and close their meetings off and do them virtual. We do have that option. My recommendation is to set an example for the students in the classroom and continue to show up here live. And if we're keeping the classrooms open, we can keep our board meetings open. But certainly, I do owe it to you to let you know it is an option should you wish to go virtual. My recommendation would be to stay open.
I agree with you as far as I think most of our board members.
So the exclusionary period for COVID now has gone from 10 days to 5 days with 17,000 asterisks to follow that statement. So bear with me. So if you're positive, it's a 5-day exclusionary period, and a negative test can bring you back after 5 days. That's really tough because sometimes that positivity stays in you longer than that. Other than that, it's a 10-day exclusion. If you don't get that positive test after 5 days, it's a 10-day exclusion as long as your symptoms are better, if you have symptoms. If you're exposed, you have 2 pathways. If you're totally vaccinated, remember booster plus 14 days, then you can mask and stay at work, and you will test after day 5, and a negative test would keep you at work. If you're unvaccinated, then you do need to be excluded from work or the classroom for 5 days and test after the 5th day to come back. If you came back in that model, you'd still be on modified quarantine, which means you're coming back to the classroom, but not to extracurricular activities such as sports. So the key to really getting through this is vaccination. She stated that several times. She was asked specifically about indoor sports after a great report from Alexa. She was asked specifically about should we keep indoor sports. She's like, I don't have an opinion on sports. She found it to be too emotional. So the superintendents are meeting Friday to start that discussion about how we're going to handle that. So that's the report. Any questions?
Mr. Posey, if our students are going, like say if the basketball team is going someplace, do they have to be tested before they go to the game or the tournament or whatever?
Yeah, they have to test, either wear a mask during play, which or they have to test every 48 hours, I think is what it is.
Okay.
And we have, the other thing on the COVID front, we have several at-home tests that have arrived courtesy of the state of California, and they are for distribution to students. So if there's any community members out there who want a test and for their student, and they can go to any school site and pick up a free at-home test. I know we got a variety of different brand names, so they deliver them to every school, every school district in the state of California. So
one of the parents asked if a student is in a classroom and saying they don't feel well, and they go to the office, do they test them or do they call a parent to come and then they have to?
If they have prior permission to test a student, they'll test them. Okay. You're probably talking your high school at that point.
I think that's what it was.
If it's a lower grade, they would call a parent before they administer it. It's an invasive, so
right.
But they have the ability, they're certified to test at the site.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Posey?
Have you been able to keep a supply of tests to get through until this game?
Ryan has done an excellent job. I will put him right up with Radar O'Reilly from MASH and his ability to keep. I'm not going to say horse trading didn't happen. I'm not going to. I don't know. But no, we have a good supply of tests, and Mr. Smith has done an excellent job keeping a supply.
Under lock. Under lock and key because of. Thank you. Thank you. Academic readiness. Betancourt? Oh, I'm sorry, trustee area map.
You have a packet before you that looks real similar to the last packet, except if you look at page 14 and maybe a couple pages before that. But I think 14 is the one of interest for you. It's in the numbers in the little brown dot. If you kind of a white font on brown dot. If you get the, sorry.
Yeah.
This is the third option that was requested by the board, where if you remember, area 2 had the little, we were calling it the hook.
Right.
And this actually, you can see that the hook's still there, but it doesn't affect our boundary. I guess it actually is a census area, which is what it was designed. It wasn't a gerrymander.
Oh, okay.
It actually was a census area designation. So, but they made it look more natural.
Yeah.
And so, and then they had to move a few other things to make that happen, obviously, for the demographics to work. So that's, there are now 3 options. The reason it's not before your decision tonight is you requested a parent input, what the community wanted, an input. And we just got this back like last Monday. So we wanted to give a fair chance for the community. So let's get out on the Google surveys and we'll get that input to what the community thinks. One of the areas we're really focusing on is our labeling of it, because there was some early confusion that we were talking about attendance boundaries and not trustee boundaries. So we were going to have bold letters everywhere. This will not affect the school your child goes to. That's not what we're asking input on, because when they see a map, and naturally.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Panic if their child's going to be having. I like the idea that hook isn't there. It would be confusing. Yes. Okay. Would anyone like to speak to the map area? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Posey. Mrs. Betancourt, academic readiness data.
Good evening. I'm going to share some data with you tonight that Mr. Posey and I worked on that we're actually very excited about. I'm going to put it in some context first. We're going to be looking at elementary data, and just as a precursor, the SBAC data is finally ready. It came Friday, so it's in here, Mr. Bizarre. You will see it at the end of this presentation. They unembargoed it as of Thursday. We could share it by Friday, so I put it in this presentation. So you're going to see a little bit of additional data, but we're really focusing in on our DIPLS data that we just finished our benchmark 2 right before we went on break. And DIBELS is an indicator of risk. So it lets us know which students are at risk of not meeting their reading outcomes. So
DIBELS is English language arts, correct?
yes, so it stands for Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah,
thought that's what I
which
was-
is why we always say DIBELS. So DIBELS is an indicator of risk. It lets us, it identifies students who are at risk of not meeting their reading benchmarks or their reading outcomes. So students who are at or above benchmark in DIBELS have an 80 to 90% chance of continuing to meet their reading goals. So once a student has a strong foundation, they continue to meet those reading goals. Students who are below benchmark, which is more of a strategic, they're not here, but they're not real low either. So they're kind of right in the middle. Those students have about a 40 to 60% chance of meeting reading goals. Meaning, we always say these are the 50-50 kids. Depending on what happens with their instruction, in their classroom interventions, they have about a 50-50 chance of starting to meeting their reading out goals. And well below benchmark, these are the kids that we focused on in this data presentation. These are the kids that in August were identified as being high risk of not meeting their reading outcomes. So basically, if we did nothing but they came to school every day and showed up and got their regular classroom instruction, they would have about a 10 to 20% chance of meeting their reading goals. Basically, there would be no change in them. They would just stay status quo. They may make small growth here and there, but these are the kids, I call them the ICU kids when I talk with teachers. These are the kids that need intensive care. So we looked at 48% of our kids when we came off of distance learning were well below benchmark. They were identified as red in the 1st through 5th grades. So we are sharing data now, growth data. We're sharing with you the growth the students made from benchmark 1 to benchmark 2.
And to be clear, we're only now going to look at the red.
Yes, we are all,
Yes.
that's the arrow there.
So what you're seeing is less without successful strategic intervention, at best 1 in 5 kids would come out of well below benchmark.
Mhm.
And probably more about 1 in 10 kids at best. So we're going to be looking at those who the first test was,
Right.
we need interventions.
And we all prepared teachers, the admin, we wanted to make sure they went into it with the right mindset, that we are coming off of a 1.5 years of distance learning. So put that into perspective, but then the teachers really got down to business and really made some good gains for these students. So what I added a little graphic because I kind of wanted to give you a visual of what's happening here. And when we do this with teachers, we talk about a mountain, that a student who is red. So if you look on the I don't know if I have a pointer here, but if you look at the very first column, that was benchmark 1. What I did do is I did separate out the kids who are English only in 1st grade from the kids who are in the DLI program, because those kids are only learning to read in Spanish right now. They're 90% Spanish. They still take the assessment in English because a lot of kids come to kindergarten with some reading skills. So you're seeing, I divided those out. So for what you're looking at in that very first column are our students in each grade level who are at high risk of not meeting their reading outcomes. So for example, in 1st grade EO, let me do 2nd grade. 2nd grade, we had 110 2nd graders across the district who are at high risk of not meeting their reading outcomes. So we get this data, then teachers start forming intervention groups and plan small group instruction, classroom practices. We did some of the sites have after school intervention, all based on some initial data that we received. So once we came back for benchmark 2, now we're looking at the kind of progress that student made after these interventions and supports had been put in place. So if we just stay with 2nd grade, once we tested the 2nd time, 16 of the 110 kids made well above typical progress, meaning their learning was accelerated past where it should have been. So those kids made the growth they were supposed to make plus more. So, and that's what they have to do in order to catch up to their peers where they need to be. We had 17 2nd graders who made above typical progress and 22 who made typical progress. Now, typical progress, you see, I kind of outlined it in those 2 dark lines. typical progress is great for those kids. Those red kids were making the same progress their peers were. They were there for a day. They kept moving. But typical progress is not going to catch those kids up. Those kids need to be making above typical progress. So the little,
if I can
go
say
ahead.
the same thing in a different way.
Yes, go ahead.
A student in red would never have seen typical progress before. They were falling behind and kept falling behind and kept falling behind. If you add those numbers up, you get to about 53%, almost 50% of the kids have at least changed their habit of learning to be typical 1 year growth.
And many of them outpaced their habit of learning and made a good chunk of growth towards that green. So the visual for me, if you're climbing a mountain, the steeper the mountain, the harder the climb. Our red kids have a very steep mountain to climb. Our green and blue kids, not so much. It's like a rolling hill. I can get there. So our red kids are climbing this steep mountain where they've got to go faster than the kids who just have this low hill that they have to climb. So our green kids, those ones I put the well above typical progress, they made a good chunk. I imagine, I don't know if you know that game where the things just moved and it's like a carnival game. Those kids just flew up. Then the next group, the above typical, they made their next level of growth. Our typical progress made growth. So all of those kids are making that climb at different rates, but they're all equitable with what their peers are doing on a day by day. And I like the way Mr. Posey says it better than the way I say it.
So the reason the 22 in that case exists in both areas is because yes, they're making typical progress, but we know they're behind. So they have to make more than typical progress.
Right.
So we need to celebrate the fact that yay, you're making 1 year's growth time or prorated 1 year's growth time. But if you're ever going to catch up, you got to go a little faster. So there have to still be an area of celebration and an area of concern simultaneously. We've changed their habit of learning, but not to the point where they'll catch up quite yet. So they kind of exist in a yay and keep an eye on you at the same time state of mind.
This is a good argument for in-house learning.
Well, it's a good argument for intervention. It's a good argument for really looking at data and targeting specific needs for students, which is what our teachers have done really well this year. It's a good argument for intervention teachers who can support our classroom teachers in fine-tuning some of these groups and resources that we use to support these students.
And if I can say this, every time she says the word teacher, understand she means teacher and instructional aides.
Yes, yes,
right.
Thank you. Yes.
Anyone who's doing the teaching of children,
exactly
is.
And we will go walk through these. I mean, I was so excited to see this because we need to celebrate our teachers and our instructional aides efforts in this regard.
Oh yeah.
When Kim and I go, or Ms. Bendecourt and I go on instructional tours 3-4 times a week, when we walk out of a K-5 classroom, we're tired for those teachers. It's not because we're taking the steps. I'm not getting half the steps I should be getting, but it's because when you go out there, you're like, wow, that was 20 minutes for that teacher or instructional aide and instructional aide. They're working, and their commitment and their passion and you're not gonna fail me. This is why you're getting these results. And I think that needs to be said.
And these percentages are good. The 47%, almost 47.3% of our kids made above typical growth. Some of them well above.
And that's only, again, looking at those who were well below
the
first test.
Right. So
that's just the subgroup we're looking at.
So, and I went through class lists and just looking, and there are red kids who are now blue kids, which means green kids, which means they've gone from, and some of those kids, it was just being on distance learning. They just needed that extra oomph. And some of them are more intensive and they need more intensive intervention.
And they're now excited to learn. Because
what we talked about today, I met with the principals because I wanted them, they weren't going to be here, but I wanted them to see the data too. And it's really setting goals for teachers, but also having students see what they did and setting goals for students. So they have a lot to celebrate, I think, with their students.
Oh, yes.
But we also have a lot of work to do because we need to know who those 130 red kids are and who those 81 yellow kids are. We need to know why they're not making typical progress. And that's the next step. That's what they'll be working on next.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Bettencourt. Can some of the data tell you whether or not they have been in school consistently?
Not in this program, but that's one thing. Once I know, I pulled a teacher today when I was working with the principal. She has 4 kids, 2 that are red and 2 that are not making, they're not making the progress they should make. Of those 4 kids, now you just do a deep dive. That one teacher can handle looking at the specifics for 4 kids. Are they in school? Are they getting an intervention that's supporting them? Do they need to be in a smaller group? Do I need to refer them to an after-school intervention? Do I need to ask one of my instructional aides to support them one-on-one? So they can now make decisions based on this data and really hone in on just those kids that need that extra support, while not forgetting that we're still teaching our regular class, our regular 3rd grade standards, 4th grade standards, 2nd grade standards.
And remember, if we go back, no, I'm not saying you to, don't please, but if we went for the first slide, those who were tested in red in benchmark 1, we'd say 10 to 20% of those would ever get out of that.
Yep.
If you look at that, that's the green area, 15.9%. So all the blue area on that, that's unexpected growth. That's breaking the model that has been from years past. And it almost takes up 50% of your pie chart.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So for next steps, we're going to take this. We worked with the elementary principals today. We're going to take the data, and then we're going to look at what that support might look like for those students who are not making the progress. And there are some students that we have what's called roundtables. I can almost guarantee you those students who are not making progress have already been in those roundtables, and they're already working on, is this something we need to investigate further with this student? Could there be a potential disability with this student? So all of those questions are being asked at the sites in what we call roundtables. But teachers in their classrooms have all of these things they can do. So I might have a student in a group of 10, and maybe he needs to be in a group of 5. 10 is too big for him. He needs more focused, smaller group support. I may give more time to a student. I may what we call double dip a student. So he may go to his intervention, then he may meet 10 minutes with me at the end of the day, and he may get that again. So there's a lot of strategies that we use and ways we can approach the support for these students. We're also going to evaluate the effectiveness of the interventions. Is there an intervention group where most of the kids did not make progress? Well, then that's not a problem with the students, that's a problem with the intervention. So actually, we're not seeing that very much, though. We've already kind of did a little bit of digging, but we do need to look at that. If our intervention isn't effective, why isn't it effective? Is it the wrong curriculum? Is it the wrong instructional mode? What is it that we need to change? And we're going to administer iReady benchmark 2 in early February. And that's going to give us a companion data to this data. This is reading outcome data. That is going to be standards-based data. How are students progressing on grade level standards? And then in March, we're going to share those results with you. So you'll see, the growth model for those. That'll be K-12.
Yeah.
iReady data will be K-12.
Will that be broken down into skills like phonics, comprehension?
Yep, absolutely. They break it all down.
It's in iReady.
Yes, iReady breaks those down. Vocabulary, comprehension, phonemic awareness, and phonics.
Okay.
I'd also like to share anecdotally that we got these numbers and they're great, right? I mean, it was heartwarming, but the administrators and the teachers' eyes immediately went to the kids who needed more strategic help. And I think that speaks to our culture of, truly, we say it as a political punchline for so long, but no child left behind. Their mindset really was, okay, what do we do for these 22% of kids? We'll take a second to celebrate the 50%.
Yes.
And it was just, good. Yeah, great.
And
what do we do for these 22%?
And I agree with Mr. Posey, success breeds success. So we have to celebrate the success, and then they have to roll their sleeves up and the next round. Any questions about the elementary data before I get into it?
Okay.
Let me see if I can go back here.
I just did these little sketches in the corner. So I'm hitting you with something that I don't know if you have any answers for. As we move through the grades, we kind of go from 1 and 2 students, 3 out of 4 students, 1 and 2 students. And that's how many of the red kids are in the yellow. As we get up in the grades, by the time we get to 4th and 5th grade, it's 1 out of 6 students, 1 out of 7 students. And also, excepting fourth grade, you tend to have a smaller percentage reds at the beginning.
So
You
are
have any
you
thoughts about
are you saying that the older the kids get,
the fewer there are,
Mhm.
and
More severe.
the more of the more fifth graders responded better. There are fewer left in the yellow than there are that moved up to the green in fifth grade as compared to first and second grade. And I don't know if you've got any thoughts. About
So
what's
as a
going on or
former
why.
first grade teacher for many, many years, first grade is it's the grade where they make the most growth. They come in not reading and they leave reading sometimes chapter books, small chapter books. And there's cycles through first grade. And really about February is when you start to see students who are lagging or who are going to struggle, they start to fall further behind their peers. So I even told Mr. Posey this, I said, first grade is just always fluid. It's very fluid. I would say that about K1 and 2. Kids are still learning to read.
And remember the effects of distance learning.
Right.
So
Exactly.
the fifth grade student was a third grade in person.
Right. Exactly.
And the third grade's that watershed year of literacy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
you would expect to see less of them.
Yes, I'm very encouraged by the fifth grade results. It actually says a lot of what was going on before the kids ever went on distance learning, which a lot of the sites had interventions in place. So I think we have to look at K1, 2 and always realize they are in constant flux. And then when we get to third, that's when we start to see them settle. That is why that red, it is so important to address. Those early interventions are extremely important. We don't want them to be, if they're read in kindergarten, we've got to start right in kindergarten. Yeah. Addressing those needs. Yeah, so I think that answers your question. But yeah.
But no, it was really encouraging to see as we moved up, not only did we have a smaller percentage in red, but that they were small. Mm-hmm. That more of those red students were moving out of that. Well, so that was really neat to see.
And you figure some of them already, since they had in-house learning before, they already had hopefully had most of the phonetic skills. Mm-hmm. They had the idea to comprehend, get something out of it, where a first grader is like, how do you do P? It's go,
yeah,
they're not sure, and you have to make sure once they get that, it's like putting up a foundation and leaving one of the cinder blocks out. So if you can get that foundation solid, it will continue.
That's exactly what it's like. Yep.
To be clear, this doesn't say they moved out of red, but they're halfway.
Yes,
because they're making more than typical.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Remember, they're climbing a very steep mountain, but they're doing a great job, and our teachers are too. And I do want to add on to Mr. Posey's, interventions would not be possible without classified staff. So they've all been trained. They've gone to all our trainings. They've been trained in our new foundations program. They're providing those interventions. So it is definitely a partnership, and the teachers could not do that all by themselves.
And the conversations, still getting to know faces and names, and probably not so much anymore, but at least 2 months ago, walk into a room and I'd be like, Kim, which one's the teacher? Because you instinctively couldn't, there's 3 people in the room. I'm like, which one's the teacher? Oh, those are the instructional aides. I couldn't tell you the difference.
Yeah. I think
they are
the Hunt intervention room, and I had to point out Mrs. Sexton's the teacher. Those are the instructional aides.
And they're generally the passion, the energy. I mean, truly, you walk away just in awe and motivated to go do more, because they really, not hearing this story everywhere. I'll be honest with you. We're not hearing this story, everywhere in the county. Mm-hmm. And it's a testament to our teachers, our paraprofessionals, and their commitment to our students. And it needs to be celebrated and acknowledged, because truly, we're on the right path.
I think we have a lot of respect for our instructional aides, and we realize their worth, where in some districts, they're kind of like pushed to the side. But thank you for all your work, ladies. Really.
So it may be a little.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. Right. After school program is also playing a huge part in the intervention piece. And that is something like surprised they haven't put a pitchfork in me yet, because we keep asking more and more and more and more of the after school program. And man, if they don't respond every time, those kids are, they're getting the services beyond the school day, and we'll have the hour of elective starting
next Monday, which
next
will
Monday,
kind of update you on that.
which will update. Yeah.
Yes,
So it's not just in the classroom, but in the after school program as well. Thank you very much.
These are the anticipated SBAC results from the spring of 2021, a little bit late. In typical years with SBAC, we were supposed to have gotten these back. We would have normally gotten them back over the summer, late August.
Maybe.
But not sure why it took a little bit longer. We only gave SBAC last year to the 11th graders during distance learning. I believe most of them came in to take the assessment, and some of them may have taken it remotely. I don't have that number. We don't really know that from the data, but if you look, I'm comparing OHS, ELA, 11th graders to the county, and they did quite well. They outscored the county ELA. And a lot of our students took the assessment. So if you notice, 174 out of the 215 11th graders either came back to school. For the most part, I think most of them came back and took the assessment in 11th grade. They do get EAP credit, early advanced placement. So anyone who scored a 3 or a 4 is already on track to take a college level math or ELA class. So they don't have to take any assessments at their college. They just go right into college level math or ELA. So we wanted them to have, that's why we gave the SBAC in 11th grade. So again, it divides it into above standards, meeting standards, approaching and below, well below, nearly met. So that looks good. This is our math. So we did not, meet the county average in math. We know this is an area that we need to address. I know many of the sites are already working on or already have in place math interventions, especially at the elementary. And I know that iReady is also supporting math intervention through the online platform. It'll be interesting, I think, to see the data that we get from iReady when we come back in March in math. I think we're going to really need to take a look at that. So this is an area that we're going to have to be focused in on. And you'll notice not as many students came back to take the math part as the English, actually quite a few less. I was actually surprised about 30 less students showed up for that. So none of this will be published on the dashboard. The dashboard has already got the 2021. It just came out Friday also, but we will have this, you'll see this in the SARCs, I believe. Well, this data will populate and you probably will see it in the site plans, just Justin's, but just the OHS. But this is the 2021 spring data. Any questions?
I tend to be a very visual person, so seeing it that way makes a lot of sense.
Yes, you can actually go online. There's a public portal that you go online, and if you're interested in if you can't find it, email me and we can send you the link. But you can look at our district, state, the county, other districts in any district in California. You can pull up. It's open to it's a public link.
That's really good.
I think in a lot of ways we shouldn't be surprised to see our math scores lagging and our English scores, because we really kind of spent the last 5 years honing on English, that and really kind of saying, well, the only way our kids are going to get math is if we get them English first. So I think that what we've been doing is showing some results.
Yeah.
And you guys will be moving forward into figuring out what to do next. But I guess this is kind of one of those places to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
I think in fairness to the data that we need to get better than 62% of our kids not prepared.
Totally agree.
That needs to be addressed.
Right.
Totally agree.
Right.
This is historically, though, the way, math has never been a stronghold in really most U.S. states.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why, but we kind of put it by the side. But we're going to get there. I mean, look what we did.
I'm sorry. But any other questions or?
I enjoy seeing us spend time looking at how we're performing for our students.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Betancourt. Okay, we have some first readings. I was interested when I was looking at some student board member enlighten me on some. the uniform complaint, the criminal background checks. So we have those that we'll be looking at again. Okay.
Alexa,
yes.
if you would ever like, sometimes we don't remember to ask, if you'd ever like to, one of the things that's in there is you have the opportunity before we vote on something to register your opinion on it. And we'll go ahead and keep that in the minutes and
Yes,
stuff like that. So if there's something coming up, if for gosh sake, speak up if you're for it or against it, and we'll keep it organized.
Thank you. Okay. Action items, consent calendar. The consent calendar items are routine in nature and usually do not require board discussion. Individual items may be removed by board members and presented for discussion and separate action. The consent calendar will be adopted by a roll call vote.
I would move approval of the consent calendar.
May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Bizarre?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace? Aye. And Mrs. Conforti votes aye. It's passed 5-0. 2, approve single plan for student achievement for Orriston High School, Yellow Middle School, Alternative Education, Hunt Elementary, Bird Barrington Elementary, and Von Renner Elementary, and Bonita Elementary. That was a lot of reading.
Yeah.
Similar, but a lot. Okay, may I have a motion to accept those?
I make that motion and also add to it that thanks for giving me every time I look at this, that the amount of work goes into those.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, Mr. Bizarre?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst? Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye. It's passed 5-0.
Mr. So is that all of the Title I money that's spent through or is there more Title I money beyond what we're spending in the?
There's a little bit more than what's in the site plans. We have about $580,000 annually
Okay.
for Title I. We do use some that is centralized. We do have some staff positions that are centralized that serve all the schools that it is eligible to be spent with Title I. And then the rest is allocated based on student population that generates the dollars.
Okay.
So the amounts per site, we figure out after we take out the centralized services and then we allocate the rest.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I was just kind of surprised. I expected it was going to be more than what I was seeing there. And that all makes sense. It's still maybe half of what I thought we got as Title I money. Thank you.
Approved site safety plan for Orriston High School, Yolo Middle School, Alternative Ed, Hunt Elementary, Hurd Barrington Elementary, Von Renner Elementary, and Bonita. May I have a motion? May I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Bizarre? Mrs. Hurst?
Aye.
Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace? And Mrs. Conforti votes aye. 5-0. Mr. Posey, how often is this safety plan updated? Is it every 3 years?
Every year.
Every year. Oh,
Every year. And the template changes with the time. So, you know, if you have pandemic infection or whatever, you might not have had 3 years ago.
Okay. Approval of the 2022-2023 E-rate ISP service bid. Would you explain what that is a little bit?
Yes.
Clear as mud.
E-rate is a program that we get from the federal government, which is not necessarily related to schools, but it is a program administrated through the schools and library fund, and it's for telecommunication services. So it basically pays, I think, for us about 80% of our telecommunication, not for devices, but for connections. So the ISP is our connection between the district and SCO. It's the pipeline that we have with them. And Edward is that, yeah, okay. So we get our internet through them and then we broadcast it out. So we have AT&T fiber locally. That's a different process, a different, it will also be a bid every 5 years. But annually we have to do this for our connection with the county office.
Now, And politically now, they're supposedly, with this Build a Better, going to try to make internet more viable for schools with hotspots. And that. Do we hear about that much? I've tried finding out.
That is a little bit different because it's not necessarily with the connection, it's us supplying connection to families.
Okay.
So this is not that, but there are other options. And yeah, last year in the budget, there was a lot of money for connectivity for our families. I have not seen anything in this year's and next year's budget for that.
Oh,
So.
thank you. It didn't make sense to me. I appreciate that. Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the 2022-23 E-rate ISP service bid?
I'll make the motion.
May I have a second? Mr. Bizarre? Mrs. Hurst? Aye. Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
And Mrs. Conforti votes aye, 5-0. Approved contract with Sage Realty Group Incorporated. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I have a kind of a question. One of the things that I noticed is we're spending some money to have these guys determine if we can modernize our classrooms, but we don't have any matching funds because we're spending our bond money on major projects.
Remember, we are anticipating some significant developer fees coming in to the district with the two developments going on, as well as the industrial development. North of us will bring in some developer fees, which is what part of this contract is to establish, to re-verify the developer fees, and then to move into that master plan so as money becomes available for new growth, our new projects, that we can get in line and get the right number for when they start giving out the funds.
And with the new development coming in, they work with the city to look at what the projections are for those to then look at what will our needs be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So not only is it, and every 2 years, the developer fees are adjusted by the state allocation board. And we want to have that ready for December when they adjust it again, because it will tick up. We may at that point be impacted enough where we can assess level 2 fees. We want to be in a position to do that.
Oh,
so this kind of gets the ball rolling, and it takes a good chunk of time to get this together. So it's better that we start now, especially before the development, so they can work on what is the impact really going to be.
And I do want to point out, I think it's really important too, that this is a product of a 2+2. The reason you're seeing this tonight is because of our 2+2. And we sat down with the city and they gave us the timelines for those developments, including the industrial north of us. When I reported back to Carolyn, she went, "Oh, we need to get this, somebody doing this, because this is going to get on us quicker than you think." So it's a good example of why that meeting is important, because it seemed like that may have not been, not for reasons of any others and convenience, it probably would not have gotten to us if we didn't meet with them.
Yeah.
And so
that was part of what I read in this. We were going to, because there was a big question that came up in the last 2+2. The city kind of said, "Here's your site, and this is going to be great because it's going to handle your kids." And we're like, "Man, that's a lot of houses for the number of kids you think you're sending that they're going to come." And city manager Holland said, "Well, this was the last plan we looked at. It's got these numbers." And we're like, "Wow."
Yeah, and the last plan
said,
was,
"Wow, that looks small." But
well, it was Diablo.
yeah.
And so the type of family that bought Diablo was different than what might buy these.
Yeah.
Might have more kids. And so when I did the comparative study with the Bonita growth, the Barrington growth, when that happened, it was we almost doubled with that growth what we had in the Diablo site. So it was important to get a more real number so we know what we're doing to make a strategic plan.
And it looked like that was going to come out of this.
It will. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your answers.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the contract with Sage?
So moved.
May I have a second? Second. Mr. Bizarre?
Aye.
Mrs. Hurst? Aye. Mr. Snodderly?
Aye.
Mr. Wallace?
Aye.
Mrs. Conforti votes aye. It's now passed 5-0. Future agenda items, the governor's budget release, which is continual. It doesn't. The trustee area map, and we will be voting on that.
Yes.
Correct? SAR reports and the board self-evaluation discuss. Okay. Mr. Posey.
I was coming up with my superintendent's report the last couple of days, and I realized we really only had 10 school days between last meeting and this meeting. So I couldn't figure out why it was so short. But I want to start by saying Happy New Year to everybody. And the joke I tell is I hope that it's 2022 and not 2022. So I really want to put a thank you out to our entire staff for helping cover COVID. I know Ryan texted me during the meeting, like 26 staff members out, I think we got today's numbers in during the meeting. And, this is kind of the next person up. Total exposed was 36 actually. Ooh. And this has been just the next person up type of mentality and this teamwork. We're sending secretaries from here to there. We're covering sites. We're redeploying resources as we can to make sure everybody stays open. And it doesn't go without going home going, wow, that was a hectic day. In retrospect, New Year's Eve might have been a super spreader event, and coming back the week after might have put us a little bit behind the 8 ball instead of taking another week. But we didn't know that a year and a half ago when figure out the schedule. So we'll keep that in mind. We are keeping our schools open. There was a rumor out there that we were going to close. I heard it, and I'm just like, nothing to it. It's not even being discussed at the county level. It would take a strong recommendation from the County Board of Public Health or County Public Health, and they're not recommending. So I do want to kind of reinforce that. We are keeping operational security in mind in about everything we do to make sure that we can stay open. We know that the best place for the students and for the children in Newman are in the classroom. And we know that's where we're going to beat the effects of COVID and the educational losses inside the classroom. Did mention we have several home tests. So if anybody needs a home test that as a student in the district, they can go to any site and get it. And be happy to provide that for them free of charge. And right now our focus is on 22-23 at the district office. So we're starting to do the plannings for 22-23. And it's weird to think of that already. Seems like I just got here. Kind of cool. So that's my report.
Thank you. And I hope you had a very, at least somewhat restful. And our staff, we'd like to thank you for everything you've done for us up until now and continuing. Mr. Bizarre.
Well, I don't really have much to offer tonight. I think I'm happy that we're back in school. It seems like to me, and I gotta, whoops.
Oh, no,
that's
sorry.
all right.
I thought I
see
turned
your
it
phone
off.
was playing some supportive music.
I turned it off.
Yes, sorry about that. Can you hear me now? Anyway, I just think that perhaps the worst of the Omicron variant is past us. Hopefully we won't see any more variants. You never know. But at least at this point, I feel fairly optimistic. That's my feeling tonight anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Bizarre. Mrs. Hurst.
I'm glad everyone's back also. The only thing I really have to add is I want to say thank you to the Interact Club for helping with the wreaths across America. We had very few wreaths, but it was a great day, and we got to honor some World War II vets. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Snotterly.
Yeah, I don't know where we're at on the swimming pool. But we ought to start looking at board policies and administrative regulations. There's got to be a whole slew of those that we have to probably adopt. So, and then the other thing is, I don't know if you started talking to the staffs about how they'd like to use the high school, not only the PE staff, but maybe, the Yellow Middle School and maybe even elementary schools. I have no idea. But, you ought to at least start getting into a conversation, instead of waiting to the last minute.
Yeah, thank you. We'll add that to a board update for next board meeting.
Okay. So Happy New Year, Chinese New Year. This is the year of the Omicron.
You're bad.
Yeah, so see you next month.
Mr. Wallace.
I was only going to have one thing, and then Mr. Sotterly said, as we're looking at swimming pool, one of the real reasons that I wanted to do a swimming pool is I look forward to being able to get, thank you. I look forward to being able to get our elementary students over there to get, basic life, the basic swimmer and stuff like that. So that every year this valley, we hear of kids drowning in the rivers and the canals. And so I look forward to getting our kids taught how to swim at an early age. The only thing that I had tonight was there is a CSBA webinar tomorrow afternoon, I think it's 5 to 6:30, reviewing what's in the governor's budget. If you didn't get that email from CSBA, I'm happy to forward it to you. I'm going to sit in on it. But if you're interested in, obviously the budget's really preliminary now, but it's available to you if you're interested. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Also, thank you. Thank Mrs. Bettencourt for getting all of this data to us now. I think it's really good for us to see. Mr. Smith, thank you for all the crazy things with everybody being absent, this Omicron. And Mrs. Fox, thank you for keeping us on our toes with everything. And you've gotten all of the evaluations, I hope, as of that. And Mr. Posey, a new year. And we're busy working. And Alexa, thank you so much for what you've been doing since school started. And we really appreciate hearing what the students have to tell us, and especially about the mental health. It really makes it happy. Have a very good new year. Thank you for after school. And we're looking forward to next month. And may I have a motion to adjourn?
Make motion.
I'll second it.
Second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
It is now 7:05.